Today we're going to go on with lecture 10. Tomorrow I think you have a session for discussing the approaches that are possible for your term project. I expect you to be all ready for tomorrow's session because that's useful. I think it's going to be useful because there's more than one way to approach that transportation project problem. So please make sure that you study it carefully, at least tonight, so that you'll be ready for tomorrow. I also looked at some of the questions, some of your answers in the midterm examination, and I will make comments on that also, a few comments. I have to say that I'm not satisfied with your work this semester. I don't know why this happens because it's as if you have understood most of the things. For example, I put simple questions just to help you get good grades about emergent properties of simple examples, or some short questions about the concepts we have been talking about. And the answers I get are not very encouraging. If things stand as they do now, it's possible that several of you will have to repeat this course. I don't like to say these things, but I mean, comparing to previous years, your performance is no good. I will not hesitate to have you repeat this course. Huh? So in the remaining time, I will try to make opportunities for you to take more grades in classwork, term project, and also there's the final examination. Please make sure that you attempt, and this is not a difficult course. I mean, it's just about some concepts. There isn't any mathematical difficulty. All you need to do is to read the subject, paying attention to it, and trying to understand it for your own sake, not for passing this course. It seems that you are not reading the readings I assign. Huh? For example, I put in some questions from the reading, the last reading I assigned, and it seems that nobody has carefully read that the article. So please make sure that you make up your deficiency in the remaining time. We have a few weeks left, okay? All right. Maybe I should first show you some of these questions and the answers to them. I graded questions 6 to 10. Each was 5 points worth. And these questions are as follows. The first one says, contrast very briefly hard and soft OR in terms of what and the how questions. I mean, I cannot put in a more simple question than this one about the difference between hard and soft. Huh? Well, some of you, of course, were able to answer it properly, but there were many students who didn't have any clue about what we are talking about, about hard and soft. In hard OR, we can assume that the what questions are already answered and focus on the how questions. That's what we do in hard OR. In soft OR, the what questions, for example, what are the issues, what are the worldviews and the stakeholder expectations, etc., these questions must be answered. The how questions are then answered by the stakeholders, not the analyst, not the industrial engineer. Okay, this is the difference between hard and soft. I have been spending hours on this, discussing this and trying to explain. Nobody gave this full answer, not one single student. The following question, number 7, give an example of a proposal that although systemically desirable is not culturally feasible. I mean, many possible answers are. You could think of many possible answers. And one of the answers I have selected from your answers and modified it and made it proper is this one. For example, office rent and maintenance costs of a firm located in some region of Turkey would be reduced if male and female workers work together in the same office. Although this proposal is systemically desirable, why is it systemically desirable? Because it's going to reduce our costs. It may not be culturally feasible if male and female employees are not willing to work together in that particular region of Turkey. I mean, this is a classic answer, and some of you gave this answer, but many answers that other students gave were confused because culturally feasible does not mean that it is something you don't like to do. For example, somebody said, one answer was that the government was putting regulations on creating pollution into the environment on the part of the companies or on the industrial firms. And this was not culturally, culturally feasible. This sort of thing may not be feasible, but it's not because it is not culturally feasible. Huh? It's got nothing to do with culture. It's about policing. It's about making sure that companies do not pollute. I mean, is there any cultural reason why companies should pollute in Turkey? That's got nothing to do with culture, okay? Cultural feasibility is about embedded. We defined culture. What is it? It's the set of common values and norms, okay? I mean, is it a value that we should pollute the environment? Obviously, it's not a value. It's just people, the firms will be unwilling to spend money to prevent pollution. That's something else. It's not about culture. Question number 8, what is meant by the logic of the situation and what is its significance for Erdogan? Now, this is the question which comes directly from the last reading I put up. Be posted. I'm going to make sure that in the final examination you will have several questions from those readings. So please make sure that you read those and try to understand them. This course is all about reading and understanding concepts and methodologies, nothing else, okay? Now, the logic of the situation was explained very clearly in that reading. It goes back to a quotation from Blackett. You know, the physicist Blackett, the Nobel Prize winning physicist, Stuart Blackett is considered by some people as the father of OR. There are many, many fathers of OR, but one of them was Blackett because he was the head of the original team in the working under the British High Command during the war. Later on, after the end of the war, he published a book and some papers. And in one of those, there's a very revealing passage, a very fine passage in that reading. So go back and read that passage where he describes the logic of the situation. He says that in situations where chance events are important, chance, uncertainty can be very high in some situations, and especially during warfare, during battle in the sea, on the air, wherever. Chance events are very, very important, and also the people taking part in those operations, the peculiarities of the people and their behavior will affect the situation. So the outcome of such situations, for example, a situation where a convoy of ships is traveling from America to Britain and there are attacking submarines, German submarines, and you have to provide protection to the convoy, okay? In several instances of such a situation, many, many outcomes will be possible depending on the local conditions. But Blackett says, surprisingly, very surprisingly, in many, many repetitions of such situations, there are some things that do not change, he says. If there are things that do not change in situations, this is the subject matter of science. Science always looks for generalizations, things that do not change, okay? Science always looks for similarities. What does OR look for? OR tries to take advantage of similarities, but it seeks dissimilarities. Our profession is about dissimilarities. Why is this situation, which is a queuing situation, not similar or exactly the same as this situation, which is also a queuing situation? Okay? This entire systems thinking course is about this question. Why problem situations, which seem to be the same in the beginning, are actually not the same? And why should we be careful about that, and how can we go about it? This is the subject matter of our course. So Blackett claimed that many situations repeat, and if there is repetition of such a situation, that's what he calls the logic of the situation. It doesn't change. The logic of the situation is invariant. It is always a queuing situation, for example, or it's always a resource allocation situation, etc., etc. Therefore, it is possible to approach, to understand such situations using the methods of science. This is what we mean by the logic of the situation. In many problem situations, there are unchanging results in every repetition of the situation. Such results can be analyzed scientifically, perhaps using algorithms and things like that. This makes the functionalist approach of hard OR possible. Okay, that's what we mean by the logic of the situation. The important thing for us, for you to remember, is that you should not pay too much attention to the logic of the situation. If you pay overdue attention to the logic of the situation, then all your proposals will be shelved, will be refused, will not be implemented, and there will be no improvement achieved. Okay? You will also, of course, look at the logic of the situation, but then seek for the dissimilarities, the illogic, not the logic, but what makes the situation that it does not obey the logic written in a textbook. Okay? Question number 9 was, consider the statement, organizations that survive through time as coherent entities do so because they have found accommodations. I think this was a little bit difficult, this question. It's harder than the others, probably. I ask you to interpret this statement in terms of postponing thermodynamic equilibrium and achieving consensus. Okay? I think there was one student who gave a proper answer to this one. Now, let's read the answer first. I mean, this is a short model answer. Survival means maintaining distinguishability from the environment. That's what we mean by survival, okay? If a system is going to survive, it has to keep on being a system. Being a system means having a boundary, being different from its environment. That's what we mean by survival. How does it do that? All systems, as you know, are open systems. How do they maintain themselves? By importing resources from the environment. That's how we live. That's how life is possible. It requires import of energy, of materials and other things. If the organization waits for consensus to take action, to import such things, action will be delayed or it will not be possible because consensus is not possible. It's not usually possible in organizations. If consensus is possible in organizations, it means that that consensus is probably not very important. It's not vital. It's about a trivial matter, which is not about the survival of the organization. When the survival of the system is in question, consensus is impossible usually. Only in very, very critical situations, like, for example, the Istiklal Harbi in Turkey. Somebody comes along, like Mustafa Kemal, etc., and convinces everybody to take common action. You know that they were not on consensus, the parties who took part in the Istiklal Savaşı. Many parties had many very, very different ideas about what should be happening after the war. But they accommodated themselves together. They reached an accommodation, and the struggle was a success in the end. Okay. So if the organization waits for consensus, such action will be delayed or not possible. Accommodation is easier to attain, and when accommodation is attained, of course, action can be taken to import the necessary inputs from the environment, and local entropy will be reduced at the expense of global entropy, obviously. But survival will be possible. Survival means postponing thermodynamic equilibrium. Thermodynamic equilibrium means the system will stop being a system. It will be the death of the system. So these concepts are, I mean, I discussed these very, very carefully, and I wrote an entire new lecture notes for you this year for this. I was expecting that these are interesting for you, these ideas, and you would be able to grasp these. It's not difficult, huh? I'm repeating again, please make sure that you look at all your material again before the final examination. The last question, why is it important in software that system models should not be models of the real world, but models of our concepts of the real world in problem situations that require software? This is, again, a very, very basic question. I would expect everybody to be able to answer this question. This is about epistemological models, ontological models, which I have mentioned at the very beginning of this semester, maybe in the second lecture or even the first lecture, I don't remember. So this should have been clear by now. Huh? I would expect some answer like this. In software, different individuals perceive the situation differently because they have different worldviews and objectives. So there must be several different models of our concepts of reality rather than a single model of the reality. That's why. Huh? That's why we have several different models. If we were trying to model reality directly, we should be seeking a single model. We are not seeking such models. We are just trying to construct models of how different people, stakeholders view the real world. Then different models can then be used to explore ways to arrive at an accommodation. Okay? Were these questions difficult to answer? Okay, well, I'm not trying to discourage you or threaten you or anything like that. Please don't misunderstand. I'm just trying to make sure that our efforts here will not be in vain, and you will go out of this course to the next year with something in your hand, okay? You can still do it. It's not a difficult course, but maybe I should have given you 2 midterm examinations. I don't know. Anyway, okay? So let's go on now. With our explanations of the soft systems approach in detail. Remember that we are doing the 5 steps. We are following the 4 steps approach, which is the modern version of SSM, in which the first phase is about analyzing the problem situation. There are several tools that we can use there. These were rich pictures, analysis 1, analysis 2, analysis 3, etc. And then in the second step, we construct purposeful activity models. Constructing purposeful activity models also we can make use of several instruments which will help us to construct these models, like PQR, etc., and root definitions. Root definitions are the central idea in constructing such models. And I gave you an example of how to write out a root definition using the Baku-Ceyhan example. There is a mnemonic CATVO. CATVO is just an anagram of the first letters of the elements that you should identify, which will then help you to write the root definition properly. We have identified the CATVO for the port manager and wrote a root definition like that. Then we did the same for the pumping officer, which has a root definition slightly different from that of the manager, the port manager. And finally, a third CATFO and root definition for the maintenance manager. So you can read these yourself. I think we finished, we stopped somewhere here. So let's go back to a diagram which summarizes the entire process of SSM. I have put in several such diagrams from Churchman's books and papers. In the first step, the guidelines. This is about constructing this is not about the entire SSM procedure, but for constructing purposeful activity models. We first identify the transformation and the W. That's how we start. Then we do the CATFO, we do PQR, PTIB. Does anybody remember what PTIB is? What is PTIB? Not one? I mean, all of you should be able to understand what we mean by PTIB. I mean, if you don't know this, if you do not study before you come to the lecture, at least study the last lecture. It's no good thing here. Okay, starting from T and W, name the purposeful action as a transformation. So we first try to identify the transformation. You see there is some input into the middle part, which is the transformation itself, and there's an output. The input and the output in the SSM methodology are the same thing. Don't make the mistake of putting an input like labor and getting an output like profit. That's not what we mean by a transformation in SSM. SSM transformations are special. The input is some entity. The output is the same entity, but in a changed state. So the transformation is a change of state. It's a fundamental engineering concept, change of state transformation. Okay, so entity to be transformed, which is related to the input, is transformed, which is related to the process, the transformation. An entity comes out in a transformed state, and that entity is related to the output. Okay. Then structure the activities according to dependency of one on the other. The activities connected by arrows. Arrows indicate the dependency. The arrow outgoing from an activity means that that activity has to be performed first and before the activity that follows the arrow. Then you add the monitoring and control activities, which are outside over there. As you can see, that's a feedback loop. In order to do that, the bottom activity, the bottommost activity there, which is coming from the outside with an arrow there, that's about the E's, the effectiveness, efficiency, efficacy criteria that you choose to use. And in the end, you check the mutual dependency of the guidelines and the model. So you assemble the guidelines doing PQR, CAT4, the RD, etc., root definition, etc. This is what you do in the end. Of course, number one ends with writing out a root definition. In the second step, identify three groups of activities. Those which concern the thing which gets transformed. For example, in the fence example, this is the unpainted fence. This fence is in poor shape. It's not looking good. We would like to paint it so that it will look good. Okay? This is the entity which is going to get transformed. So identify that. Identify the activities associated with this transformation. Then any activities concerned with dealing with the transformed entity. That is, for example, judging if it improves the appearance of the property. So identify the activities which are about judging what we have transformed. This will give you a cluster of activities. So, I mean, you don't have to actually exactly follow these steps. I mean, the situation is usually simple enough so that you will be able to write down all the activities that has to take place for achieving that purpose. It's a purposeful activity model. The purpose of the activity model is stated in the root definition directly. So once you write the root definition, it's really not difficult to think about the activities. The comments here, numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, etc., are just there to help you a little bit more, but they are not really too important. In step number 3, you connect the activities by arrows which indicate the dependency, etc. Okay, you do those things. And add the 3 monitoring and control activities. This is the outside loop, which always have the structure shown in the figures that we shall look at now. Once you finish that, check the model against the guidelines. Ask yourself, does every phrase in the root definition lead to something in the model? So every piece of words or phrase, group of words in the root definition that you have written, should correspond to an activity in the model, to a circle in the model. Ask yourself if it does. Again, ask yourself, for example, can every activity in the model be linked back to something in the root definition or the CAT4? Do this in reverse. This time, look at all the activities in the model and ask yourself, can I associate this activity with something I have written in the root definition or in the CAT4? So forward and backwards. This is double checking. If the answer to both questions is yes, then you have a good model, a defensible model. Here's a comment. Experienced practitioners working from the same root definition might well produce somewhat different models. So this is a possibility. If I give you a root definition and I ask you to produce a model from this root definition, even though the root definition is a single one, different practitioners may come up with slightly different models. This is permissible, okay? Why does this happen? Because they are interpreting the words in the root definition, the PQR, CAT4, etc., somewhat differently. The important thing is that you can defend your model as representing what is in your root definition, etc. You should be able to defend it. So even these purposeful activity models, if they are constructed by different parties moving from the same, even from the same root definition, can be slightly different. So this comment reminds you that purposeful activity models are not models of the real world. It's about our perceptions or conceptions of the real world, of how this purposeful activity should take place in the real world, okay? This is the purposeful activity model of the fence-based painting situation. It's very simple, as you can see. Activities number 1 and number 5 are independent of the others. They can be started without waiting for any other activities, etc. And the others depend on each other. We have already looked at this example before. Now, the outside loop is important, and the outside loop may not look exactly like this, consisting of just 3 circles like that. It could be modified. Remember that this is a methodology. So the steps, there are not definite steps that you have to obey or follow. You can make up as the situation, as your inquiry requires, makes it necessary. So this is an example, a variant of part of the model. There we say, appreciate householders' aspirations for the fence painting. Just think about what the householders' expectations are from fence painting. Maybe, for example, you would like to paint your fence because you are thinking about selling your property later on, so that it will increase the value of your property. Or maybe you are going to paint your fence because you would like to impress your new girlfriend. Or whatever. I mean, appreciate all of these things. Then define the criteria for effectiveness according to that appreciation, etc. So such steps can be added. Efficacy and efficiency maybe are more simple to decide. This is purposeful activity model, a root definition, and CATFO all together. This is a nice example for you to study carefully so that you can see what a purposeful activity model looks like. This is a complicated example. It's a good example. It's a real example from a case study in the National Health Service. It's about a hospital. The case example we shall study in lecture 11 is also similar. It's similarly from the health sector. It's about, again, a hospital. But this is different. This is more complicated. The one we shall discuss in class is simpler. This is part of a large project. Let's read the root definition. A hospital-owned system which provides records of spending on drugs so that control action by administrators and doctors to meet defined budgets can be taken jointly. Well, does it make any sense to you? A hospital-owned system which provides records of spending on drugs so that control action by administrators and doctors to meet defined budgets can be taken jointly. So apparently, there's a hospital, and this hospital, of course, when it needs to operate, it has to obey some budget limits. It has a budget. And as you run the hospital, of course, you have to use a lot of medication, drugs for the patients. And these drugs are taken out from inventory, and of course, it causes an expense, a cost, and these costs accumulate, and there's the possibility that these costs will exceed the budget limits that the hospital has to obey. Apparently, in this problem situation, there was such a problem that the hospital was exceeding the budget limits on drug costs, on expenditures on drugs. So there was a problem, and they said, well, the doctors, of course, in a hospital, you see there are administrators, like the head doctor, or I don't know the English word, başhekim, and there are the doctors themselves. A hospital is a very peculiar type of organization. It doesn't look like many other organizations. The reason for this is that the employees of a hospital are professionals. The employees of not all the employees of a manufacturing plant are professionals. The largest number of the organizations of a manufacturing plant, for example, are not professionals, are workers. Do we understand what we mean by a professional? Who is a professional? An engineer is also a professional. What do we mean by a professional? A professional is a person who makes his own decisions. Okay? Just keep this in mind. This is what we mean by a professional. This is the proper definition of a professional. If you are a worker, sometimes, I mean, this has changed, but in the past, if you visited a factory, a plant, you can still see some instructions hanging on walls about how to operate machines, about what the workers should do when they come in the morning, beginning with washing your hands, for example, taking out the tools, inspecting and greasing the tools or whatever, adjusting, calibrating. And the worker can do his work by following the instructions which are on the wall. So you tell the worker what to do through those instructions. Or there will be a foreman, ustabaşı. The foreman will instruct the line workers what to do, maybe. Of course, manufacturing situations are, systems are changing, you know that. We have now flexible systems and automated systems, etc. Things are changing even in such situations, but still, this is a good way of understanding who a profession is not. But if you are a doctor or a nurse is also a professional. You do not, for example, give a list of instructions to a doctor telling him what to do exactly in every situation, because the situations that the doctor has to deal with are complex situations. It's the same for engineers. Huh? You don't write out instructions to electrical engineers. They will decide what to do. How will they know what to do? That's what the university education provides. Okay? The university education provides knowledge, sophisticated knowledge, complex knowledge, which cannot be taught by instruction. Özümsenmesi lazım. But becoming a master of that knowledge and making their own decisions. The doctor will decide, for example, what drugs to administer to a certain patient. What sort of treatment is necessary and what sort of treatment is not necessary is the decision of the doctor. So what makes a hospital different from many other organizations is that activities which incur costs are conducted by doctors, and as a result, of course, the administrators can suffer from the decisions of the doctors, because for the doctors, you know, they take an oath, the Hippocratic, where the foremost concern for them is the health of their patients, is the well-being of a patient. That's what a doctor learns in order, that's the first step for becoming a professional. So the doctor will decide what to administer, and it may be very costly, and the budget limits can suffer. So there's a real difficulty here, a tension between the authority of the doctors and the authority of the hospital managers. Now in our stupid country, we are having private hospitals everywhere. And in private hospitals, of course, you have owners, the capitalists who are the owners of the hospitals, who are concerned about the costs. I mean, they should be concerned about costs. So this sort of situation is very complicated and difficult to resolve. So in this case, they have come up at least with a system of recording, a foolproof and reliable recording system of what drugs have already been used and what costs have already been incurred. Presumably in this situation, such a system did not exist before. So this is what they are trying to do. If this information system is in place and working effectively, then the doctors and administrators can jointly decide what to do. Doctors, to meet defined budgets, can be taken jointly. You see, the administrators will have to ask the doctors, and action has to be taken jointly. So it's a case of software, as you can see. So there's the CATFO analysis. The customers are administrators and doctors. The actors, in this case, are not stated. We don't know who are the actors. Probably the actors could be some management information or computer operatives or something like that. We don't know. The transformation is the need to know spending on drugs. The need to know spending on drugs. Presumably they don't know this in the present situation, so they need to know how much spending has been incurred on drugs, have been expended on drugs. And the transformation need met by recording information. This need satisfied. The transformation takes the need which is unsatisfied and satisfies it. It's the same entity, the need. The Weltanschauung says monitoring spending on drugs is possible and is an adequate basis for joint control action. This is how we understand. We think that monitoring, if we monitor the spending on drugs, this will, first of all, it will be possible to do this, and it will be a good basis for joint control action, etc. So you can also study the activities, each one of these activities one by one. Let's look at the outer loop. The outer loop is quite important. It says appreciate hospital aspirations for the system. What does the hospital expect from this new data recording system? Huh? These expectations, aspirations means expectations. Appreciation means değerlendirmek. Okay, evaluate the expectations. It's the same as appreciate the aspirations of the hospital from the system. You have to start with this. And then, accordingly, you can define criteria for effectiveness, efficacy, and efficiency. Okay? I'm not going to spend any time on the activities. You can read them on your own. So that's a good example of a purposeful activity model. Now, of course, here, there will be several such models because the administrators will consider this data recording system differently than doctors. The nurses will conceive this system differently than the administrators and the doctors, etc. There may be other interested parties, technicians, for example, in operating rooms, the X-ray technicians, etc. These people, etc. So there will be several different such models. They will not look the same as the models of the port officer, the maintenance manager, and the pumping officer did not look the same. They will be different. I mean, I did not construct the models for the port manager, port officer. I mean, maybe I will ask you to construct such models. Okay, so you should do good to work on those. So these models will be different, and these models will then be put side by side. Nurses will sit here, the doctors will sit here, and the administrators will sit, and they will view the models all together simultaneously and have a discussion. Okay? So this brings us to step 3, which is using the models to structure discussion about the situation and its improvement. So you see, we are going to have a discussion about the situation. The analyst, the industrial engineer, is not going to propose any solution for improving or any proposal, will not be bringing up any proposal to improve the situation. Improvement will come out from the discussion among the stakeholders. The analyst is sitting there just as a facilitator, trying to make sure that the discussion is effective. It's not like a on the street discussion or a coffee house discussion, okay? What does it mean? It will not be such a discussion. It means that the discussion will be structured. So that's why we say structure. Using models to structure discussion. The discussion will be a formal discussion, structured discussion, so that it will be effective, it will be able to produce, to approach, to arrive at an accommodation that will produce improving action. Typical discussions among professionals result in confusion. Even when doctors are sitting in the tea room at the hospital, talking about this problem situation we have seen on the previous slide, these professional doctors, while they are having tea and cakes in the cafeteria of the hospital, they can have a discussion, but this discussion will be confused. It will not end up in any useful result. Okay? Typical discussions among professionals result in confusion, which then provides a cover for personal and private agendas to be advanced. These discussions will end up in confusion, and the parties to such unstructured discussions will try to use this confusion as a cover for their own agendas. Yani kendi isteklerini yerine getirmek için bir kılıf olarak kullanabilirler structured olmayan discussion'ları. Okay? Use of purposeful activity models helps to avoid this. If you have been able to construct activity models, then there will be a formalization. Then the discussion will be on the basis of the models, and nobody will be able to object because everybody was free to bring up his own model. Okay? So this is how we formalize the discussion. Structure to the discussion is provided by using the models as a source of questions to ask about the situation. So these models are used as generators, question generators. They generate questions that we ask of the problem situation. This phase of SSM, this is step number 3 or phase number 3, has usually been referred to as comparison between situation and models, but this wording is dangerous if it is taken to imply that the discussion focuses on deficiencies in the situation when we compare it against perfect models. Perfect models, why the models are perfect? Because they are conceptual models. This is what we think the real world ought to be like, should be like. But we should not try to put entities or make changes in the real world so that it will look like our perfect models. This is not what we are trying to do. So this is a warning about that. The only use of these models is that they will facilitate structured discussion. The purpose activity models simply enable, these models simply enable our organized discussion to take place. Okay, let's stop here.